Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Aaron Porras here with ILTV's Morning Briefing.
After months of hinting, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced on Saturday that Australia will finally recognize West Jerusalem as Israel's capital, leaving East Jerusalem for a future Palestinian state. Morrison also said he looks forward to moving the embassy in kind, quote, when practical, end quote. But the decision was received with very mixed reviews. The Palestinian Authority, the Arab League, and several other Muslim or Arab states all condemned the move, saying it will undermine security and stability. Palestinian Authority Foreign Minister Riyad al-Malki said it showed a total bias towards Israel, and Palestinian Authority negotiator Saeb Erekat went even further, accusing Australia of violating UN Security Council resolutions, saying that, quote, all of Jerusalem remains a final status issue for negotiations, while East Jerusalem under international law is an integral part of the occupied Palestinian territory, end quote. No Israeli officials were too quick to issue congratulations either, though. Israel's official policy is that Jerusalem is and will remain the undivided capital of the Jewish state. This led to a very tame statement acknowledging the move, but not welcoming it. The Israeli Foreign Ministry thanked Australia for support against Iran and anti-Semitism and for Israel at the United Nations, but only called the recognition of West Jerusalem, quote, a step in the right direction, end quote. There was no response at all from the Prime Minister's office. Perhaps the most surprising response actually comes from Bahrain, though, a country with no official diplomatic ties to the Jewish state. While the Arab League condemned Australia's, quote, irresponsible and biased decision, the Bahraini Foreign Minister Khalid bin Ahmed Al Khalifa tweeted, quote, these are irresponsible statements. Australia's position does not hamper the legitimate demands of the Palestinians and first and foremost East Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital. It also does not contradict the Arab Peace Initiative, end quote. It's not exactly a statement supportive of Israel, but it certainly doesn't appear to be against Israel either. And just earlier this month, Al Khalifa also supported on Twitter Israel's Operation Northern Shield to find and destroy Hezbollah terror tunnels from Lebanon. The two IDF soldiers murdered on Thursday in a drive-by shooting near Givat Asaf were laid to rest on Friday. The two other soldiers wounded in the attack remain in hospital. But 19-year-old Sergeant Yosef Cohen and 20-year-old Staff Sergeant Yovel Mor Yosef were murdered when a terrorist leaped out of his car and shot at his victims in close range near the Givat Asaf outpost. Friends and families paid tribute to the fallen soldiers, and a soldier from their unit said, quote, everyone loved them. They were people who were always willing to volunteer. They were good people, salt of the earth, end quote. Yossi Cohen served as a lone soldier because his ultra-Orthodox family did not accept his decision to join the IDF, and just a few hours before the shooting, Mor Yosef messaged his father that he volunteered for guard duty that day so that his friends could go home and get some needed rest. The attacker, on the other hand, fled the scene of the shooting, launching a massive IDF manhunt to find him. It wasn't until Friday that he turned himself in. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded in a statement saying that he will accelerate the demolition of terrorists' homes, will continue efforts to apprehend murderers, and will increase IDF reinforcements around checkpoints in the West Bank. He also decided to legalize thousands of homes in Judea and Samaria, requesting that Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit enable construction of 82 new residential units in Ofra as well. Netanyahu wrote, quote, they think they can uproot us from our land. They will not succeed, end quote. Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, on the other hand, have issued their praises over last week's string of attacks, leading Energy Minister Yuval Steinitz to condemn Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's incitement campaign against Israel again, saying, quote, whoever pays the terrorists and gives out awards to them, whoever welcomes terror activity and teaches their children hatred, is responsible for these attacks, end quote. In related news, Israeli security forces encountered a lot more terrorist activity as the weekend progressed, starting with a stabbing attack on Friday near Bet El in the West Bank, in which an Israeli soldier, Naveh Rotem from the Kfir Brigade, was injured. Rotem is in the hospital in stable condition now, but this was the fourth major attack in just a week, marking a sharp uptick in recent Palestinian violence. The suspected terrorist from Bet El has since turned himself in, but it didn't stop the IDF from performing a wave of arrests anyhow. 40 Palestinians, 37 of whom are Hamas members, were arrested on suspected involvement in terrorist activities on Thursday, and then during arrest raids near Ramallah on Friday in Al-Bireh, 6 Palestinians were reportedly injured, and another was fatally shot during clashes with the IDF. Dozens more Hamas members and lone terrorists were then arrested Friday and Saturday as well, including one of the suspected Ofra shooters, Mohammed Barghouti, and 2 armed Palestinian men who were picked up outside the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron. One had an Uzi submachine gun, and the other an M16 assault rifle. Speaking with Israeli Ynet News, a Golani officer said, quote, there's a sense of an increase in the level of terrorism. It makes our fighters more alert, while our offensive action causes the Palestinians to think twice before allowing firearms in their homes, end quote. But still, there is a sense of more tension in the area recently, and former defense ministers Ya'alon and Lieberman now again seem to agree on why. Ya'alon contributed the last week's violence on Israel's, quote, weak response to Hamas in Gaza. He said, quote, we should have hit Hamas hard when it flew the fire kites into our territory. This was a violation of our sovereignty and it needed a tough response, end quote. Also, over the recent rise in terror, hundreds of Israeli civilians are now also raising their voices in protest against the government's action or lack thereof. On Thursday, demonstrators rallied outside the Prime Minister's office, waving Israeli flags and carrying signs reading that the Israeli nation is not terrified. Some protesters even held a picture of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, marked as a target though. Then in Tel Aviv, the families of victims Kim Levengon Yechezkel and Ziv Hajbi, who were murdered at the Balkan Industrial Park in October, held similar protests. They were joined by Simcha Golden, the father of the IDF soldier Hadar Golden, whose body is being held by Hamas in Gaza, and they called on Israelis to join them Saturday night at Kikar Rabin to demand that Israel take a tougher stance on terror. In fact, most of the protesters' arguments largely lined up with former defense ministers Ya'alon and Lieberman, who claimed that Israel's failure to respond harshly to Hamas rockets in November gave a green light to future violent terror tactics.
That's all for now. I'm Aaron Porras, and see you later with our main daily broadcast from Israel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.